So what I thought I'd do is kind of do a warts and all thing about all the mistakes we've made over the last few years when we've been designing for mobile, because after all, like anyone that's been around for a little while, we didn't start off as mobile designers, we had to learn it. So I thought I'd kind of do a bit of mea culpa, but I'd also start with a bit of homage to our friend Lublinsky there, who we all love, I'm sure. So, like Helen, it's a list of 5 because those are memorable and catchy. So first up, kill your darlings. Now, one of the problems with Gordon's going to do that clearly. One of the problems when you come to design for iPhone is that, unlike any other platform, I think, your client is going to have often a very clear idea in their head of what the solution might be, and might be really, really executionally focused. It's not just iPhone, actually. Recently, we were working for a travel company, and they'd really been Microsofted. Well, anyway, they really loved Windows Phone 7, and they had this great idea that they came to us with of a panorama, right, for the Windows Phone 7 app. And we said, brilliant, that sounds great. What's it do? Why? And said, well, panorama, right? It's great. Yeah, pivot. It's fantastic. It's going to be brilliant. So the problem you're going to often come up against with any of these really engaging mobile experiences is that your client is so engaged and so passionate that they've already solved it for you. So how do you work back from there? How do you unpick this? One of the approaches that we've found works quite well is to say, okay, well, that's great. That's a really nice idea. Let's just step back and remember what the problem is. What is it that we're trying to achieve here as a design team? And then look at all the possible solutions that might meet that. And then at the end of all that, if we still think that that thing that we put over there is exactly the right thing, then brilliant. Maybe we'll do that. But maybe we'll give it a chance to see if there are other options too. So this thing about having to get people to kill their darlings can be a real challenge. People do have this kind of vested idea as to what the right solution might be. There's our fat cat, by the way, coming along. Okay. Next challenge. Go on. Hello. Hello. It's weird.
Fat cat says no.
Give us a sec. See if that helps. Oh, you can't have a keynote crash. This is your fault, Andrew. Andrew's going to tell you, well, how comes your setup was so quick then? Ah, disaster. Complete crash. Might have to hand over to someone else and come back, if that's all right. Rather than force people to sit through a system reboot. That would be very exciting. Come in next week's instalment. Oh, piece of shit. Okay, instalment 2. You'll remember where we left our hero. Very exciting. So next up of those 5 is the question of how high fidelity you should go. And so our horror story here was of an app that we released a little while back where we had a team of remote developers, seriously complex workflows, and we had decided that sketching was definitely the right way to go in advance of actually having begun the project. And because a lot of the time sketches are all you need. Mobile screens are only that big. It takes no time at all to draw it. It can be really, really effective just to draw one, draw another, draw another. And that can definitely work sometimes. Other times, and in this instance, definitely not the right approach. You end up with pages upon pages upon pages of scanned-in, scrappy sketches. Can't remember how anyone relates to anything else. You kind of get to the point you think, you know what? A good old Xero prototype would probably have cracked this a whole lot better. So how to choose which one is the most, which approach is most effective? Think about the complexity of the interactions you're trying to describe, how close you are to the dev team, how experienced that dev team are, what kind of documentation they're expecting, and also how complex are the transitions themselves. I mean, one of the major differences about moving from a kind of a web design background into mobile is that it's the transitions that really can often make that experience. How much do you as a UX designer need to start stipulating that, or at least thinking it through? So fidelity's an interesting thing to get right, and if you don't, it can be painful. Please transition. Yes, thank Christ. Love your dev. One of the scary things that I first learnt when I was moving into iPad app development was how little comes out of the box if you're a developer. Apple, Android, Microsoft have done a really good job of defining interaction design patterns and calling them design languages. But if you're a developer, there's almost nothing that comes out of the box. I was talking to a developer when we were working on this first iPad app, and I was saying, well, here what we had in mind was a drawer that would pop up and you'd be able to carousel between images and choose one, which sounded to me as an iPad user really kind of normal. And he kind of nearly fell off his chair. He said, really? Is that important? And what I just failed to appreciate was how complex this was. And even these buttons here, which as an iPhone user you see all over the place, have to actually be custom made. Every single one is a load of code. And the latest version of Xcode does allow a bit of dragging and dropping, but even so, there's a whole lot of code going on that you really need to be aware of. And because a lot of mobile design projects involve bringing together a relatively small team of multidisciplinary people, then it's all more important to be aware of what you're working with and what your developer is having to come up against. They're quite mature design languages, they're less mature coding languages. Okay, next up, if you're going to learn on the job, accept that it's going to cost someone at some time. We had this great idea for ebookers that we would create an iPad app that brought together all of the all the content from different social networks about any destination, about any type of holiday, into one stream, and then plow that into an iPad app, and it would be glorious and gorgeous and amazing and incredible. And it kind of works now, but my God, it was painful getting there. And what we'd really failed to grasp was that we were trying to do so much in one massive go. And the learning that we've had that's worked really well since is that if it's a technology that you don't know, then you've got quite a big technical dependency, so you need to get ahead and deliver a technical proof of concept as early as you possibly can. Ideally, before you've sold the idea in. That would be perfect. And know that, in the words of Donald Rumsfeld, you definitely have those unknown knowns. There are things that someone probably knows, but you definitely don't know. And that's just something to be aware of. Okay, last of those 5. Compromise is always painful. This is PugPig, for anyone that doesn't know. This is phone gap, or phone crap as we call it. And this is a generic set of technologies that is so scary and expensive that I'm not going to begin to talk about it now. But these two are based around the same idea that you'll very quickly and easily be able to create an app and farm it out magically as native apps to Android and iPhone using exactly the same UI, because if it's different, it breaks to hell. And it's based on really clunky HTML5 code, and my God, it involves compromise. So a couple of years back, we picked PhoneGap because they told us that it would be able to do everything that we possibly needed to do. And what we assumed was that because it was a native app, it would feel like a native app and it would be able to do everything that a native app could do. Only once we'd begun the design process did we realize quite how limiting that really is. I remember sitting next to a developer and we were trying to find a carousel, just a carousel of images that would work and wouldn't kill the phone. And it was close to impossible. So these technologies have massive compromises. This one even more, but that's just a whole world of pain that I'm not going to go into now. But that doesn't mean compromise is always wrong. I think it's really interesting that Facebook chose to use HTML5 wrapped native apps for iPhone and iPad. And yes, they're slightly kludgy user experiences, but we have to assume that they've worked as a business strategy for the last 12 months or so. I know they're rebuilding them natively now, but for a while it was definitely the right strategy for them. And I think there are definitely instances when you would pick one of these technologies and say that's a reasonable choice to make. All you need to be aware of is that it definitely does involve compromise. So kill your darlings, think about level of fidelity, love your dev. Learning on the job really costs, and compromise is always painful. Oh, and lastly, I think it's really important that we start thinking about ourselves as kind of multilingual designers. If you need to learn different mobile languages, they're all very different, as Helen talked about earlier, and it's really important to learn these languages. Once you've learned one, learning another one is much, much easier, but we do need to think about them as distinct languages that you need to be expert in. And my God, it changes your job once you've done it, because I'm just going to give you a brief case study. Here's the National Rail Inquiry's iPhone app here. This is one of the first things that we did within this account. And so here are some icons developed for home and work and favorites. Here's then the Windows 8 app that Jeff over there worked on, bringing on some of the concepts but developing them a little bit more. And the next thing we needed to go back and do was something called a website. What we found, having done all this stuff across lots of different platforms, the website was kind of the easiest thing suddenly. And you suddenly thought, well, why wouldn't you involve some of the same visual language and some of the same ideas of tabs here, and this button changed massively. Everything changed because in the words of Luke again, we did go mobile first. So that was it really. Thanks for sticking with the technical problem as well.